and not to meet, so.
Yep, for sure.
Share this.
If I have anything crucial to write down.
Hey. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's the appointed time, and thanks for the executive committee presence in the room to kind of hold this together physically. I'll try to do my best to chair remotely, and assuming that my signal remains strong, we'll move forward with that assumption, and I'll ask the vice chair to step in if or when you stop seeing or hearing me. So with that, I'm just trying to see, do we have, it looks like we have 3 of our members on the executive committee present. Is that correct? Myself, the vice chair, and Commissioner Tyne. Is anyone else participating from the executive committee that I'm not seeing? Kayla, is there anyone? Maybe Kayla, I should just have you take the roll. That might be the easiest thing to do, since we probably have to do that anyway, since we're participating remotely.
Happy
So
to
why
do so.
why don't we do that? We'll do the roll call, and then we'll move forward with the approval of the agenda and the minutes.
Excellent. Vice Chair Norton.
Present.
Commissioner Tyne.
Here.
Chair Wheelock.
Present.
Secretary Williams. A quorum is present.
Wonderful. And then the agenda and the minutes have been sent out, but let's take them individually. Can I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Let's have a roll call on that as well.
Vice Chair Norton.
Aye.
Treasurer Tyne.
Aye.
Chair Wheelock.
Aye.
Secretary Williams. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No worries.
All right.
The motion passes.
Been approved. Now the approval of the minutes.
So,
Is there a motion?
so moved. Tied.
Second. Not time.
Been moved and seconded. And can we have a roll call vote?
Vice Chair Norton.
Aye.
Treasurer Tyne.
Aye.
Chair Wheelock.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you. The primary purpose of the executive committee meeting today is to review and approve the certification to deed about the investment that has occurred in Rochester affiliated with the DMC activities. And I always love this agenda item because it's so wonderful to hear about the magnitude of both the Mayo and non-Mayo investment in the community, despite some challenges across the years with the pandemic and interest rate environment. And so I'm looking forward to the presentation today, and I'm really going to turn it over to Patrick, but we have Doug Holtan from the Mayo and Alison Zelms from the city of Rochester, and I'll turn over to Patrick to lead us through the presentation today.
Thank you, Chair Wheelock and members of the Executive Committee. I note that Paul Williams just joined as well. As the chair said, the purpose of this meeting is to present the private investment that's occurred in Rochester from Mayo Clinic and in the DMC district, non-Mayo and private investments. And your job is to review and to authorize that report for submittal to deed. And as a reminder, it is part of the enabling legislation that was created that was based on the notion that through the combination of private investment by Mayo and non-Mayo private investment coupled with public infrastructure investment, that we would be stimulating this economy, and we are to document it by showing the evidence of that private investment. Ultimately, this releases funds from the state of Minnesota, specifically GSIA, General State Improvement Aid funds. And you'll see in this report, we have met the formulaic match to release $30 million of public infrastructure funds that will come to the city of Rochester pending deeds review of this. Those funds, of course, are used to support public infrastructure like public spaces, streets and sewers and sidewalks, support of strategic investments, and so forth. So it's really this mechanism that helps to document the progress and release those public funds. You'll see a report today that Mayo Clinic, stealing Doug's thunder, documented $133 million of investment in Rochester, and non-Mayo private investment of $12.5 million. And just to show that over time, we document this and have been since 2015. And in this chart in front of you, blue is the Mayo investments, and the orange is non-Mayo investments. And so you'll see that over time we have been averaging, this community's been averaging about $173 million of private investment, and you'll see peaks and valleys both in the Mayo investment, and you'll see some peaks and some tightening at different stages, and likewise with the private investment, you'll see some peak numbers, and then as the cycle progresses, you'll hear about how we see that trends occurring in this current year, last year. And we can come back to that chart if it's useful. And then over time, the cumulative investment now is $1.6 billion between Mayo and non-Mayo investments. So with that, I'd like to invite our partner from Mayo Clinic, Doug Holtan, to give just a brief illustration of the investments that we've seen from Mayo Clinic this past year.
Thank you very much, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. As Patrick mentioned, in 2023, Mayo Clinic reported qualifiable expenditures of $133.6 million for projects done in Rochester that we feel meet the critical intent of DMC funding. So we do a lot more work than that every year, but we go by a very conservative approach to make sure that we're only reporting those that truly qualify per the legislation. Cumulatively, Mayo Clinic has invested over $1 billion now since the beginning of the DMC funding process. So we're very excited about that progress, and obviously much more to come. I just want to take a few minutes just to highlight 3 different projects, and just to show how we do projects that really support practice, education, and research, our 3 shields. First, to begin with, on the practice side, the Anderson building. This is an expansion of our proton beam therapy that currently takes place in the Jacobson building. This expansion is on the east side of the Eisenberg structure. We will be able to see 900 additional patients once this opens for patient care the second quarter of 2027. This is a 110,000 square foot building with a planned budget, including our East Logistics building, of $200 million. So this is a great enhancement to meet critical patient needs, and patient needs from the community, the region, nation, and of course worldwide. Next, investment in research, our Anna Marie and Stephen Kellen Research Building. This opened in December of 2023, the grand opening. We are still finishing some finishing work on the upper floors, but this 176,000 square foot structure, 11 stories tall, is focused on research. So we are bringing top level talent in the research field to support, again, patient care, both here in Rochester and across the world. So very excited about this structure, and I dare say my favorite building on campus, really excited about the progressive design of the structure. And then as we talk about education, our Seeb building, this building was built back in 1989, and the focus of this building is education. And over the years, we had reassigned some space for some administrative functions. We've really refocused and put this building back to being almost 100% education focused, either to support our various schools, a medical school, our allied health staff schools, graduate school of medicine, and support space for those activities, as well as large lecture halls, meeting spaces. So a lot of remodeling going on inside the Seeb building. And then, of course, Bold Ford Unbound in Rochester. This is an in-process design picture, of course. A great deal of publicity on this, as it should be. But this $5 billion investment over the rest of the decade obviously will have great contributions to our DMC efforts. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Patrick.
Thank you. Feel free to interrupt if you have questions of Doug. But I do want to note that oftentimes we do talk about these projects as capital investments, but they are important community impacts because they are places. So when we, and I know this meeting isn't a meeting for discussion per se, but just to get on the radar and for the community to get on the radar, the proton beam facility, again, a great new facility. What's important, I think, for the community to appreciate is it represents the capacity that will provide services for an additional 900 patients in a given year. And these are patients who come in family cohorts oftentimes, and they're here for extended periods of time. So thinking about what are the needs of those families and users of that facility, and how does our community respond to that? Long-term stay options, childcare options, education options, sort of all of the things needed for people who come here for treatment for extended 4 to 6 week kind of treatment. Or the Kellen building, Dr. Gores, who was head of research as that project came to completion, said to me that we see this building as satisfying needs of our current workforce, researchers and scientists, but we also see it as a recruitment tool when we are trying to attract the top talent from around the country to be able to show them this Category 1 facility is a recruitment tool. And the implication to us, I think, in the community is, what else does that workforce need, and what else is that workforce looking for when they are choosing or considering Rochester? And then mentioning the education shield and the investment there. Again, our effort around supporting the growth of the talent development, workforce development, and how that fits in with other investments going on in the community around workforce development. So again, for us to think about these projects in the context of what is the implication to our community, and how do we play a role, and other members of our community play a role in meeting the new opportunities that get created because of this. And if there aren't any specific questions, and we certainly can come back, I think it's an appropriate time to pivot to Alison Zelms, City Administrator, to talk briefly about non-Mayo private investments. So Alison, I'll give you that.
All right, so I'm here to talk about the non-Mayo clinic investments. And so we saw in 2023 about $12.5 million invested in the DMC district from non-Mayo private investment. Those ranged from a $40,000 project to a $1.5 million project. So you can see that a lot of those are really local investments. Some of those are new investors to Rochester, but it's both investment and reinvestment in continuing to thrive in Rochester's downtown. That brings the rolling total since 2015 to $539 million of non-Mayo Clinic private investment in the DMC district. And so obviously quite a significant milestone hopping over into the future. And obviously that's a little bit less than we've seen in the past, but still really great investment considering we're still recovering from some of those lower years. But for most downtowns, that's a really big number. And for us, it's leading up to some significant future investment. So I think it's really important to focus on the types of investment that were made. So we have significant new investment in the restaurant scene in our downtown. So it's really preparing us for that exciting and vibrant place that we want to be. We're on the map now in the foodie space. Some retail reinvestment and investment with New Spin Bike Shop. The innovation space is covered here with build out of 1 and 2 Discovery Square, the Bio Business Building. And then we saw some reinvestment in both new and older hotel properties. So getting ready for what's next, making sure that our products are vibrant and an experience that we want to have for people that are visiting Rochester and the Mayo Clinic. And obviously we have now students in our downtown. So we had the retrofit of the DoubleTree to be student housing for the University of Minnesota Rochester. And although it doesn't get counted here because we're doing this by the numbers for the report to deed, I also think it's really important to acknowledge the collaboration that's been happening between DMC, the city, Mayo Clinic and other partners to really activate on the downtown task force strategies to continue to make sure that we're a place where people want to be, whether that's visitors, residents, future residents, or investment in our downtown for hospitality and other housing in the future. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Patrick.
Thank you. So just in summary, a cumulative investment of nearly 1.6 billion. Mayo now up to over $1 billion. We continue to meet the formula required to meet the maximum state aid, and happy to entertain any questions or clarification. I think your role is to consider this report and pending your review, advance it to DEED, and DEED will then do their own audit of this report. So there is an audit process that takes place during the summer months before final approval of certification happens.
I have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Let's start with the questions with Commissioner Tyne.
Sure, thank you. When you figure out these dollars, is it when the project is complete that the dollars are attributed to a year? I mean, because I see some buildings on there that looks like most of the construction was more than a year ago, and now it's in 2023. Is that how it works? So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So DEED allows us to report projects as permits are closed. So,
Okay.
And then there's been some opportunity along the way on big multi-year projects to report midstream based on a certain level of construction completion.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I had just more of a clarification. And it's
Member
more for,
Norton?
yeah, thank you. It's more for, just for the public. When we looked at the charts and graphs earlier, that those are relative to DMC, the downtown DMC district's growth. We have much more growth in the city of Rochester outside of the downtown area, but that is not what this report reflects. So I just wanted to be really clear on that, should someone take a peek at this and think, oh, we aren't, I expected more, because there is growth outside of the DMC district, but we're doing a DMC report and that's all that's here.
That's correct.
Thank you, Member Norton. That's a valuable and important clarification. Member Williams?
Yeah, just thank you for the information and really good information. The figure that really sticks out at me is the 1.6 billion in total over these several years, and $1 billion of that coming from Mayo itself, and 600 million coming from privates. I mean, that's a great leverage figure. My question is, how much has DMC expended of its total? I think, is it 560?
That's correct. 585 million.
Yeah.
Um,
What has been our kind of cumulative investment from DMC? I'm just trying to kind of think about these three numbers alongside of each other. It's all I think a wonderful kind of story of leverage.
Yes. Member Williams, we are, without having the number in front of me, I'm going to say it's about 220 million of the public infrastructure investment has been either invested or pledged. So, for example, BRT, not yet done, construction to commence, but it's already been committed or pledged. So if I were to partition out what's actually in the ground, it would be a smaller number of that 220 million.
Again, I think again those three numbers alongside each other is just it's a wonderful story of impact, especially in the last 3 to 4 years of really turbulent kind of economic times coming out of the pandemic and so forth. So, bravo.
And if
A great question. And go ahead, Mayor Norton.
Oh, this is Alison Zelms. I think it's also just important
I'm
to
sorry.
note, building off of that comment, that is also part of how we have been able to be successful at the federal level and state level to bring additional investment to Rochester, both downtown and around the city. So it's not just leveraging value in the downtown. It's creating an image and a message and a story for Rochester that's been able to secure hundreds of millions of dollars of other investment for across the community.
I think, Patrick, that to Member Williams' point, that perhaps on an annual basis where we review this report, it would be good to think through how to capture the DMC in particular investment or pledge. And I think the public funds are doing exactly what you want public funds to do, which is to incent and promote and support private investment. But there is I think it's a great question about the leverage story, and it's a good one to think through how to support that as we move forward. The note that I would, maybe two things, a comment and a question. I was particularly taken with private investment about some of the investment that's occurring within new buildings, new structures, new entities. And I love the idea of maximizing the ROI on an investment that's already been made. For example, the Red Cow, I think, is a good example of it's an intensifying of an investment that's already been made and improving the ROI in terms of economic activity. And I think it's easy to get lost because it's not a new footprint. It's not a empty lot that now has a structure. And I really love that activization and the intensity of use of a property and the footprint. So that's the comment. I think the question is, we've certainly talked about the pandemic, and both in terms of how to better support existing businesses in the DMC geography, how to recruit and attract new businesses, what we learned from the pandemic. And I am very cognizant and appreciate the comment about, for example, the proton beam expansion, having had a family member who benefited from treatment at the Mayo for proton beam therapy. Not everyone is as fortunate to be able to live closely and to be able to come and go from treatments. And so I do think you pose a great question about what is the expansion of the capacity of treatment facilities like that, or practice facilities like that, mean for DMC, about its orientation, about its investment. And that, coupled with a continued challenging interest rate environment, I do hope that we continue to think through, in partnership with our public partners, what we might need to think about differently or do differently, or how we use tools differently to get over the hurdle of an interest rate environment that's higher than it has been in many, many years. So that's just maybe not a question, but a request that we continue to keep that very face forward, so that we can find ways to overcome some of the hurdles that are slowing down the private investment beyond what we would ideally like to see. Any response to that, Patrick?
Absolutely. So I think a big part of the conversation that we're having with Mayo Clinic around Unbound is to better understand what does that mean for the future patient population that we can expect in Rochester. And they are very much anticipating and preparing for a more highly acute, serious and complex patient mix than probably has been the case in the past. And it's perhaps a conversation to be had at the full board or even at the joint board meeting to better get a peek into what is not the physical vision of Bold Forward Unbound, but the programmatic vision, and how is it part of their solution, if you will, to treating more people at home, but those who need complex and serious care in place here in Rochester. And what does that mean for the makeup of services in our community that our community is so good at? I think the conversation that you brought up around this moment in time, are there tools that we can deploy to help get the market unstuck to be better able to respond. And I will happily give the floor to City Administrator Zelms. City Council had a very robust discussion on this topic and seemed to convey an appreciation and an acknowledgement and an expectation that staff would come back with some recommendations. And I'm looking at you, Allison, if you want to, say more about that.
Yes, Chair Wheelock, there was a really good discussion with the City Council a little over a month, I guess it was a little over a month ago now. And so really looking at this, not just from a downtown perspective, but from across the community. And so would certainly welcome the continued conversation with DMC staff and the board to see how some of those ideas might be able to pair with some of the different investment tools that we have available within the DMC district. So really looking at what are some of the ways that we could think about development agreements differently, knowing that those are long-term agreements, and the hope would be that we're not in this interest environment forever, and thinking about some of those triggers, whether or not there's other kinds of partnerships that can happen on certain types of projects, considering how we might really leverage the economic vitality sales tax to spur new investment. Some of that wouldn't be downtown, but some of it could be. And also thinking about how we look at abatement differently. We haven't really utilized tax abatement very much in the city of Rochester, but really, or at least in recent times, thinking about how that might be an opportunity, as well as considering modernizing to a degree, or at least for this point in time, some of our tax increment finance policy, and how and when and how much, and thinking about how much risk we might be willing to take on if we're able to build into some of those development agreements opportunities to relook at things as interest rates change. So it was a very positive discussion. I think there was good understanding that we might need to think about something different, and really be thinking about there's risk to taking on more risk, but there's also perhaps equal or more risk to doing nothing, and perhaps getting nothing. And so wanting to be ahead of the game and being looked at as a place to at least consider for investment, because there would potentially be that open-mindedness to how something might be able to get done in Rochester in a way that might not be there in another community.
Yeah, that's very helpful and responsive. And as usual, you're multiple steps ahead of me, so I appreciate that. I want to get back to the agenda item at hand, which is the approval of the authorization to submit the report to deed. Are there any other questions about that material? And if not, can I have a motion for approval of the resolution?
Sure, move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I guess, Kayla, would you mind taking the roll?
Of course. Vice Chair Norton.
Aye.
Treasurer Tyne.
Aye.
Chair Wheelock.
Aye.
Secretary Williams.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Again, my appreciation for Patrick and Alison and Doug's presence here today to share this. This is the culmination of a lot of hard work, and we look forward to actually submitting this to the state, and with the expectation of it being well received and fulfilling our obligation. Patrick, I'm going to turn it back to you. You have a number of updates for us. Of course, this is not a full board meeting, so I think it's helpful to share with the subset of the board that's participating today, as well as any public members who are listening in, a status of several key items, but we'll try to hold back any deep dive into the substance of those until we're actually in a full board meeting.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just note that the DMC EDA Board President, Dr. Otley, is online observing the meeting and listening as well. So just noting that. Just a few items that we've been working on subsequent to the last board meeting. Housing was talked about a moment ago. We remain actively engaged in that work alongside the city, and as was discussed, City Council has taken up this conversation and looking for a collaborative approach to trying to help move projects along. We've also been working on the downtown, the strategies for how DMC can support the downtown historic district. That was direction that you provided us at the last meeting. Again, we are working with property owners in the downtown, the Rochester Downtown Alliance, and our city colleagues and others to think about all of the layers of support that might be applied to help create a vital historic district, and what are the particular tools that DMC may add to that. We talked about the MedTech 3.0 initiative led by Greater MSP. That application to the federal EDA for grant support was submitted on time, I think actually 3 hours early, a week or two ago. Rochester, I think, is very well represented in that application with support from DMC and Mayo Clinic in positioning grant support that would help position the Mayo Clinic platform's role in smart med tech device. So that's that moved ahead, or is moving ahead. Still lots of work to come. Shared lab, we talked about that. Conversations and negotiations continue on that. Nothing specific to report today, but that remains work in progress. And then we had conversation around capacity building. This has been a conversation that's been led by Alison and Cindy Steinhauser at the city, and our team around how do we build the capacity necessary to ensure successful realization of the many projects in front of us. The $5 billion Unbound project, of course, led by Mayo Clinic, but will require lots of support from the city to move that project along, and nearly $1 billion or more of other public infrastructure, public investments in the same period of time. So what is the capacity necessary? And so a lot of good work happening in that arena as well. So again, nothing for action. Just wanted to let you know that we continue on the path, and we'll have more to report at our May meeting.
Thank you. And just a reminder that we will have our May regular business meeting and our joint meeting in May. So make sure that those are both on your calendar. Are there any comments or questions about the updates that Patrick shared? And thank you, R.T. Ryback, for joining us here today as well. I just want to make sure that was on the record.
I've been here. My video wasn't showing up. For some reason.
Well, thank you. Thank you for turning it
You're all
on.
brilliant. So
I'm missing the participation by non-video. I guess I apologize for that. Any questions or comments for Patrick? All right, seeing none then, well, thank you for that. We'll look forward to a further discussion on many of these items at our May either business meeting or joint meeting. And I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Kayla, would you call the roll?
Certainly. And Madam Chair, just before we do so quickly, because we have remote participants who are on the executive committee, by statute, we need to state on the record the reason why, and that could be a scheduling conflict or health or other reasons. And so perhaps this is a good time, Chair Wheelock and Secretary Williams, to note the reason that you're participating remotely.
Member Williams, you want to go first?
Sure, scheduling conflict.
And I'm out of state.
Thank you. Then as to the motion to adjourn, let me call
Could
the
state-
votes. Oh, go ahead.
if you need me to stay,
You don't need to, RT, as we,
Okay, fine.
it's only for the executive committee members
it,
that need to
yeah,
provide
got
a reason.
Cool.
Thank you.
Good.
All right. On the motion to adjourn then, Vice Chair Norton,
Aye.
Treasurer Tyne,
All right.
Chair Wheelock,
Aye.
Secretary Williams.
Aye.
The motion carries.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And again, we appreciate the work that's been done to present this to the executive committee. We'll follow up and make sure it gets submitted, and we will look forward to seeing you all in May.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.